All right, I'm kicking it off. So welcome the creative team to Happy Hour, Cinco de Mayo, my own fashion style. We have two special guests on today who you can see on the screens here. Choose the future you, Joanna, and Joanna's assistant,
Kelly.
Kelly, who's joined us, and they're going to be running most of this happy hour for us. Before they get going, I just wanted to give a quick introduction to Joanna. Joanna has been my friend for about, oh my goodness, 15, 18 years now. I don't know how long.
I was in college when you guys met.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're talking about.
She is a force to be reckoned with, and she is an amazing lady who's built a new business called the Amplify Lab, which is who she's representing today with her and Kelly. She's been doing that for about 5 years now, I think, Joanna, right? 5 years? Prior to that, Joanna built Pandora in terms of all their sales operations and sales advertising management. She did that for 5 years. And then prior to that, she was at CBS Interactive for 10 years, 12 years, I think. And that's where I met her, where I managed to sell her something at that given time. So it was a match made in heaven, and we've been friends ever since. So if I add that up, it's probably about 15 years ago now, probably 17 years ago. Joanna, she has a really interesting, very unique, very novel approach. And I've actually worked with her at a couple of my other companies where I've had to do a very similar thing. I'm not gonna steal her thunder. I'm gonna let her describe what it is that she does. But just to say to you, like, if you've ever wondered how to describe yourself, and ever wondered how to make yourself stand out in a room, ever wondered, like, how can I be more confident about explaining it is what makes me special? Yeah. That is Joanna's secret sauce. And since her discovering that she has this very special talent, which again, I'll let her describe what it is, she's built this business around helping tech entrepreneurs, tech companies, individuals, C-suite officers. She even did something with Ray Dalio, so she can express and she can explain on different people she's worked with. But she is amazing at doing this and has built a company around helping, again, individuals and companies work with their staff to, again, I don't know how to explain what it is that you do, like, understand your potential, right? Your growth potential.
Yes. No.
Yeah. So thank you, Joanna and Kelly, for joining. Thank you for offering to be here with us today. Everyone should have their screens on as much as possible, please. And I'd ask everyone to be 100% focused and be stay involved and stay listening. And at the end of this, we'll regroup and talk more about how we're going to work with Joanna in the future.
Stay attentive, because I'm staying attentive.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Jeremy and Gina and Terrell, for making all of today happen. I am just going to go out on record and say that I am super jealous that you all have margaritas. It is only 2 o'clock in the afternoon here in California, and I still have to be conscious for a couple of clients after you guys. So not so much for me, but there will be Cinco de Mayo activities later. So I actually want to tap into what Lori just said. 5 years ago, I left Pandora after being through their kind of rocket ship moment, the moment you are all going through right now, with absolutely no plan whatsoever. I had no idea what I wanted to do. What I did know is that I was not excited by the idea of scaling another ad operations tech stack again, because I had done it a number of times. And I was out trying to figure out kind of what this next phase of me was going to be and how I wanted to take this next journey in my life. And through a number of very happy accidents and experiments and just really exploring the idea of ambition, I got invited to speak at TED, weirdly, about the intersection of weight loss, 3D printing, and podcasting. And it was there that I had the unique opportunity to meet all sorts of really amazing people, including Ray Dalio, who I ended up having a much more interesting conversation with around this idea of the future you and why it's important in this modern working world. And that's a little bit about why I'm here today. And so I want to start off talking about this idea of ambition and ambitions and how they exist in the world. And here's what I love about ambition is I think it's really interesting because it's bidirectional. I can be ambitious for you and you can be ambitious for yourself. And it needs to actually exist for both. You need to be ambitious and I need to be ambitious for you for your ambitions to manifest. And I think I've now said ambition at least 10 times. I'm going to say it some more. But what is also super interesting about ambition is it's both a generous and selfish act rolled into one. And I really liked the idea of both. Like, well, hang on a second. If I'm going to map a path forward, how can I be, totally selfish and ambitious for me, but how can I also be selfish and ambitious for others? And this is where the idea of the future you really started to manifest, because that person, the person that you are going to be, you should be a little bit selfish for them. You should also be generous for them. You should also be selfish for others and generous in others. And it is ambition. And when you actually sit down and pull all of that back and say, okay, who is that? It's actually describing who is the future you and what is your potential. And how are all of these activities going to impact the future? And that's what I am here today to talk about. I'm here to talk about the future you. And really what I have learned after stumbling upon this many years ago is that the clearer you are about who the future you is and why other people would care about it and how you're ambitious for them, the better it is for everybody, including your larger team. And I mean, you're all kind of like, you've said ambition and potential and all sorts of fun buzzwords, and I don't even know what you're talking about. So hang out during this hour because we are going to talk through all of this and I'm going to break down some of the concepts. FYI, this is not a talking head conversation. You are going to participate. And I'm going to be sharing all sorts of information with you guys as you go along. And of course, it decided cancel. I don't want you to share there. I want you to share here. There we go. We are going to be sharing all sorts of things, including ideas. So the first idea beyond this ambition and potential is that you are teaching people about the future you with every interaction. And I am going to teach you how to take agency of that and how to intentfully teach everybody. But before we jump in, I have some logistic stuff that we need to sort out so that you can participate. So first of all, I want you all to say hi to Kelly, who you sort of got introduced to before. You can see Kelly waving at the screen. Kelly is going to be the queen of the chat room. So if you have comments, if you have questions, if I'm referring to anything, if I talk about links to things, if I'm asking for volunteers, we will be doing this. All of those sorts of things. Kelly is going to be the master of ceremonies in the chat room, managing all of that. Second of all, I am going to be asking you some questions along the way, which we are going to use a nifty tool called Slido. And so either on your computer or if you're somewhere else on your phone as well, I want you just to go to slido.com now and just enter the super difficult code of 23456. Or if you want to be super fabulous, you can hold your camera up to the QR code we have on the screen right now, and it will launch the page for you. We're about making it easy. And ta-da, Kelly should be dropping the link in chat if you just want to click on that. That's going to help us navigate all of this. Last but not least on logistics, I'm going to get to the end before we start at the beginning, because we've got a, well, now what do I do gift for all of you. As you hear this and as you, I hope, build some more curiosity about the future you and your potential, we've created a downloadable action guide for you to ask a bunch of the questions that you're going to hear today. So if you hear anything, you're like, oh my God, I didn't run any of this down, no big deal. We've put them all in a document for you. We've got some more questions about the document. The link we are going to send to get that is going to pop up in the chat. We're going to share it a couple more times. If you're like, I'm not sure I want it yet, you can do that however you want. Okay, so let me turn off my little screeny share and come back to you. Okay, so I said this was going to be interactive. Let me have you all roll your sleeves up. I want you to grab either a piece of paper, does not need to be pretty, back of an envelope is fine, or if you want to just pop open somewhere you can type on your computer screen if you're in your office and you don't have paper around, like whatever your situation, because we're going to do a little thinking exercise. And don't worry, we are not going to need you to share this with anybody. It is just for you, but I do want you to something to write on because I do have questions. Okay, and Jeremy, I'm a little worried because I put your name on this as the promoter of this, and they may come back and say, well, I want to do this. He did not condone anything I'm about to say, but play along anyway. Okay, so I want you to imagine for just a second that Jeremy just asked you to take lead on the big project of your dreams. It can be anything. Go big, go home, the whole 9 yards. Like if you had Jeremy just saying, go do the thing, what would you do? And congratulations, by the way, I'm sure you are going to do a wonderful job here. Bonus in this entire project is he's given you, because I want you to think big, unlimited budget. All the money you need. You need $1 billion? No big deal. Can totally make that happen. This is why I said it hasn't actually been condoned. You do, however, have two constraints. One, you can only have 4 total people on your team to work with you. So the complete group is so you and 4 other people. Here's the other thing. You can choose anyone. They don't have to be alive. They can be dead. They don't have to work at Created. Whatever. There are no rules around who your 4 people are. The other constraint is whatever your big idea needs to be done in 90 days or less. No pressure, right? Easy. Okay. So here's what I want you to do regarding your dream project is I want you to answer all of the following questions. And I went ahead and put my own dream project on there so that you could see how I'm answering the questions, not looking for anything fancy here. Okay, I'm going to get out of the Slido. So here's the future you exercise. You've got the unlimited budget, 4 extra people, 90 days or less. Okay, question number 1, just write a very brief, what is your dream project? Mine, among other things, is to kill both the resume and the job description because I think they're both crazy. I think a resume is about as exciting as a nutrition label is on a can of beans, and oh my God. And then job descriptions at best are often guesses. I think it's time we moved out of like the 20th century construct of those and moved into the 21st century. And that includes killing both of those documents because they are not serving either any of us or the people who are hiring us. So let's kill those 2 things. Okay, so who do I want on team me? Well, oh, and I actually gave myself an extra person. Well, so I'm obviously going to include Kelly here because she's fantastic. I also want to include a guy named Neil, who I absolutely think is brilliant. Another woman named Amber Allen. And then last of all, Lori, I want you on team me because we've done all sorts of fun shenanigans before. You just got recruited into my project. We're going to make it happen. So here's my team plus Kelly to add to this. Then what role would we all play? So because I have a bit of an idea around the product, I'm going to be the product person. Kelly is going to run operations. Neil is going to cover technology. Amber is going to interestingly run sales, and Lori is going to run media partnerships for this. This is how I thought through this. And then last but not least, on the why them, well, that's going to be my secret to keep on this, but I'm interested to know. So I'm going to leave those questions up there, and I would like you to literally write these down because I want you to keep them, because we're going to have another exercise later on the call to refer back to them. So write down, again, your dream project, names of 4 people you would want to recruit on, high level, what role would they play? And I just picked ones that were important to me. Doesn't matter. You could have chief bottle washer on your role playing if you need it, or underwater basket weaving, also totally fine. And then why them, just 1 or 2 words why you chose them. And when you're done, just kind of wave at the screen so we can see when everybody's gone through the thought experiment. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can actually see you guys.
Are there 4 people or 3 people?
There's 5, well, 4 to 5.
Meaning you can include yourself or not.
Include yourself
but you can-
plus, yeah, plus 4 people.
Plus 4 people. Thank
If
you.
you can do it, Jeremy, if you can do it with 2, then even better.
Okay.
Raise the stakes. There really aren't any rules, but I do want to, I want at least 3 or 4 names on your list of people you would put on Team U.
I said I would never join a team that would have me on it.
Yeah, but I think you have joined a team that would have you.
Isn't that a famous like Groucho Marx line or something like that?
He's a good personality.
Can we put Groucho Marx? Can we put back up the list? I was just, what is their role?
Yeah, what
Why
role
them?
would they play and why them?
And then what's your project?
Yeah. I haven't seen any hand wavy stuff yet. Have we had anybody who's finished yet?
I'm done.
Okay. I'm seeing no hands across the room. Are you all that thoughtful about this? All right. With the exception of Jeremy, because he's been far too vocal already. Well, Jeremy, I want to know what your answer is after this. You have to tell me. Who's up for sharing their big idea? Anybody? Come on, somebody's got to have a good idea. Okay, hi.
Hello, I can go first.
Armand, what is your big, so answer the 4 questions. What's your dream project?
So my dream project would be acquiring my favorite soccer team, Arsenal FC, from London. So obviously I would move to London. And the 4 people I would have in that dream team would be my twin brother, just because it's my twin brother. You don't know any of these names, but Pep Guardiola, who's the best soccer manager in the world of all time, in my eyes. Henry, who's my idol, who would be in charge of operations and just sporting operations, I guess. And then another icon, Arsene Wenger, who I grew up watching. He was Arsenal's manager ever since I was born until very recently, and he would be the director of the club just because he knows the club so well. And yeah, I guess that answers all the questions.
Okay, awesome. And while no, I didn't know who any of those people are, I will also go on record that I am a former Ipswich Town fan.
Oh, nice.
Actually, used to watch them play when I used to live there, but of the days of when Ipswich actually won the FA Cup finals.
Yeah, they're not very good right now.
Which was a little bit of a long time ago.
Yeah.
I just, recently heard that the British are not super excited about Americans coming in and buying their teams up.
No, there's been huge
a little bit of a
protests.
problem. A little bit of a PR. I think you need a PR person in there.
And I guess it's timing wise as well. That's why I wrote down what I wrote down, because of everything that's been going on for the last month.
It's a bit of a shit show. I love a big idea. I think, why not buy a soccer team? And
if I had the money, that's honestly
what you would do. I like this. A very original answer. Okay, so you all went through that, and we all got to hear how future owner of Arsenal soccer team, or football, if you actually are living in England, their big dream and who they had in their exercise. What I want you all to do now is to go to your Slido app for just a second. And I will need to share the screen again so that you can see what I'm doing here. It would help if I shared it. There we go. Okay. And we are going to answer the first question that is on there. So when you were thinking about your 3, 4, 5 people, when you first had that first gut instinct, what was most important to you? Their skills and what they had done, their attitude and who they were, or their potential to do stuff with you in the future? We'll see what the mass is. Come out with. We got any more votes coming in? All right, we'll stick at 22. Oh, we're getting a couple more in. The race for skills and attitude is out there. I would argue that their skills are also their potential at the end of the day. But I think what we all know on this is what you have done and what you have accomplished, what you are known for, both within your skill set and your attitude, is critically important, because it's what tells the story of someone's potential. And you've just dealt with people who are very known to you, and you can really easily see who the people are and why they matter to you and why that happens. And you sit here and say, okay, why do I need to care about this? Why does this impact my career? Well, that same fast decision is the same decision every single one of us is making every single day about who do we want to put on our slightly less ambitious goals of buying a soccer team. It's, who do I want to have lunch with? Who do I need help with on this project? Who am I going to assign this project to? Who do I want to hire? Who do I want to promote? That first question, when you think about the dynamic, and this is why I think the job description is done, when you think about the dynamic of how business gets done, what happens in a room that you are not in is somebody goes, oh my God, we really need somebody who's really great at X. And it doesn't matter what X is, but it's something. And the first thing they think is, who do I know who's really great at X? Like, who's the person who's really great at X? And then they go, well, they available? And if they don't know, if they're not available, who might they know who is available for X? And there's a whole conversation in who could the potential person be based on what it is they're known for, and one's ability to recognize and remember their potential. Because I have no doubt lots of you in your career have been in a job where there are lots of you that have the same skill set, title, what have you. Like, how did they choose one person over another? Was all based on this, do I see somebody's, the combination of their skills, their attitude, what they are known for, and the future you, their potential, and how are they thinking about that? And that's, when I sit here and go, you've all gone through an exercise about thinking about other people who might have impact for you. And the question I ask is, gosh, if this conversation is happening all the time, shouldn't we be more intentful about who we are and what we are known for and how we describe this person, so that when somebody is thinking about their next big giant project, they're really thinking about the future you and understanding what it is you're bringing to the table, why it matters, and all of those sorts of things. Because at the end of the day, every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you're not in. Every decision. Now, do you get to choose whether you want to take that opportunity after they go, oh, do you want to do this with me? Absolutely. which is why if you are also the person in the room making the decisions about people, they choose you as much as you choose them. But ultimately you come back to this singular truth, which is what I anchor around in this whole consultation of future you. So, okay, if every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you're not in, what do you need to think about? So one, are you part of the consideration set? Do they even know you exist? Now, obviously, we've got the creative team. My guess is you all know each other. So hopefully, yes, if you're looking for a job, it's a whole different story. If you're working for a really big company with, I don't know, 60,000 employees, probably not. You don't even know. So are you part of the consideration set? Number two, when you sit here and say every decision made about you is made in a room that you're not in, it means they are talking about you. And here's my question. Do you know what they're saying? And not only do you know what they're saying, but have you actually taught them what you want them to say? Now, if you go back to the beginning of the presentation, I talked about how we are teaching people who we are and what we're all about at every single interaction. Every time you accomplish something, you help somebody, you brainstorm with somebody, you're teaching somebody about your value. And so they have an opinion the same way Armand did about the various different people, I had no idea who they were, about their potential to help him in the future. Now, I'm going to spoil a couple of things when you sit here and go, well, I know what I'm known for. Quick tip to all of you. You do not want to be singularly, and I say singularly importantly, singularly known for getting shit done / being able to figure anything out. You also don't want to be just known for being the person who connects people. And then my third, please do not do that, is either a creative or strategic thinker. Now, I'm sure all of you are like, wait a second, what do you mean? Well, what do you mean is if you're on this call, you should be all of those three things already. And from my conversation with Lori and Jeremy and the rest of the team, you already are. So why do you want to be known for something that absolutely everything on this call is? It's not unique and it makes it, frankly, a bit boring. Here's the other thing. I've done this presentation and talked to thousands of people about what are you known for? Number one answer, I'm really good at getting shit done. Number two answer, I'm really good at connecting people. Number three answer, I'm a really creative and strategic thinker. This is why those three are at the top, because also in the world of work, it's the thing you would be fired for if you didn't do it. So why do you want to be known for something you want to be fired for, right? Here's the other piece of this. I have a hunch, and I'm pretty confident about this already, just based on the conversations, that you are far more interesting than that. And when you thought of those four people, you thought of the interesting, intriguing, unique parts of them that are uniquely them versus, like, Armand didn't pick just any soccer players or any coaches. He picked the ones he was like, well, hang on, they are known for being really good at X. I think your last person specifically was the best at X. And those people that you thought of on your list and that Armand thought of have been teaching people who they will be in the future all the time. They've been teaching their audience about the future them. And we have decided to choose them or not. You know, there are hundreds of kind of celebrity examples of this. I think whether you are a follower of him or not, Elon Musk is a genius at this. And I also don't think he could give a hoot, which is totally fine, but he is absolutely teaching people who he is and what he thinks about, which is really big problems and really big ideas all the time. All the way through to the other extreme of somebody who I think we all know is I think about Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she was alive. If you have watched any of or read anything about her, she was authentic and original from, I think, the moment she popped out of the womb. She was unapologetically ambitious in who she was and what she was all about. She was consistent about who she was and what she was all about throughout her career. And similar to Elon Musk, I would say really understood the benefit of using visuals, AKA her collar, to tell a story to her audience. Now, am I saying you need to be Elon Musk or Ruth Bader Ginsburg? No, but I am saying this is how people choose you. And when I sit here and say, okay, people are choosing the future you, don't you want that person to not only be recognizable, but also to be unique? Recognizable so someone can see your potential, and unique because there's nobody else like you. You are uniquely awesome in your own individual way. Okay, so that's a pretty interesting idea. We're going to do some more show and tell, but I want to get back into a little bit of story about this whole idea of future you and how it could not only impact your life, because we've been selfish there for a second talking about you and your team, but also at a team level. And I am going to take a little path down something I'm very passionate about, which is science fiction. And by the way, don't worry if you haven't seen either of these movies. My guess is you have a pretty good hunch of what I'm talking about. I have a different example later around this idea as well, which is a different story, which I think is universal and everybody remembers. So first of all, let's talk about science fiction in the future for a second. I feel when I think about how the language of people, which is your value is only based on what you've done in the past, your resume really doesn't tell your story, this very binary, industrial, linear language that we currently use and how it's not working for us, really is heading us in a Mad Maxian kind of direction, where it's a bit of a winner take all, there's winners and losers, and there's scarcity, and it does not look awfully fun, if you ask me. Although, you know, original Mad Max, Mel Gibson was pretty fabulous. When I look at science fiction and say, okay, of all of the sci-fi movies I've watched, which is the future world that I'm like, actually, this one looks pretty great. It's actually the vision of Gene Roddenberry and the Star Trekian kind of world. I think that looks really amazing, because I sit here and I go, would I go work for any of the people who worked in the Mad Maxian world? No. Would I go work for the Federation and get a job there? Yes. And a big part of that is it's clear to me that they hire in the Federation based on your unique potential and not on resumes. Let me explain, because I'm going to go back to the original Star Trek with James T. Kirk and the Enterprise that we all know and love. And I want you to imagine that it probably wasn't Captain Kirk himself who staffed his team, although maybe he had some influence there, why they chose various different people on the team. And let's talk about the job of translator. Now, in the job of translator, your job is to know a bunch of languages, right? You have to be able to translate what's being said. And now let's say we have two candidates. We have Spock and we have Lieutenant Uhura as two different candidates. And I want you to think about who you would hire. In today's construct, with your value is based on all of the things you've accomplished, your history, all of the boxes that you've checked, your expertise only, then looking at, we don't actually know Lieutenant Uhura's background, but looking at Spock and what we know about him, he was a bit of a robot computer guy. Like, he would be able to, my guess is he spoke, and I think he did speak, a ton of different languages. And if you look at, if you were going to choose between Spock versus Lieutenant Uhura, my guess is you would, without knowing the larger story, would choose Spock all day if you were using today's calibration. However, when you think about what is the job to be done in the future and take it through the potentialist lens, then you start thinking about what is the job of translation. And the job of translation is to create meaning and understanding. And to create meaning and understanding, you have to have exceptionally high EQ. You also have to have exceptionally low ego when it comes to understanding other cultures, understanding how to navigate through other cultures. And quite frankly, based on what I have seen out in the world, an African-American woman has to navigate that kind of experience in the world we live in today. And so ergo, not only is she human, which versus Spock, who's half Vulcan, half human, she scores significantly higher on EQ, but also she has more experience in this idea of creating meaning from language, which doesn't sound like the language that she naturally speaks. It's actually called code switching in the world today. If you're interested about that, go Google it. It's very interesting. And so I sit here and I say, like, how can you create that in a whole team? And I just, I will move off my Star Trek rant of awesomeness, because I sit here and I go, if you look at every single team on the bridges of the various different ships and stories, they were fundamentally diverse thinkers. They came from diverse backgrounds. I mean, good Lord, there was a Russian in the 60s on the original Enterprise, which at the time, I think we were pointing nuclear weapons at each other. It was not a great space. And I think that sort of thinking, added to the Prime Directive that Gene Roddenberry talks about, really starts to create a workplace where your whole self, who you are as a whole person, really gets to be. Okay, so you're all like, that's awesome. Maybe you've decided you would have hired Spock. That's okay. So I then sit here and I say, okay, so how do you manifest this for you? How do you manifest this for the team at Created? Well, I need you to start being selfish again, because we're going to have you focus on you. Because if you think about this idea that not only are you teaching people about the future you all the time, but every decision is made about you in a room that you're not in, then the first question is, what do you want? And I'm going to take you through a couple of the questions that we have in the workbook that Kelly has dropped the link from, that you can ask some more of them. And some of the key questions when I think about future you thinking and how you start considering the future you, et cetera, where should you start? Okay, so let me go back here. First of all, big key question, what are you ambitious for and who needs you? Because you are, in essence, renting your time to somebody in the future, and who might want to buy that? What are your questions? So who needs you? And then more importantly, why do they need you? I'm gonna say this again, you are renting, you're selling a subscription to your future time, to your boss, to your colleagues, to your customers, to everybody. That is the thing we choose, is we choose to do future shenanigans with you. And so really understanding what do you want and your ambitions and why do they need you is critically important. Then I sit here and say, that's fantastic, but if they do not know you exist, then nothing happens. So how can they find you? And then how do you make it easy for them to say yes? These simple questions make a fantastic difference in allowing people to make it easy to say yes to the future you. And so really understanding how to make it clear about the promise and the potential of the future you product is critical. Because right now, I believe we're making people guess. Okay, so I told you that I was going to tell you a different story that was not Star Trek related, that I think you can all recognize, to talk about this on an individual basis and kind of walk you through the thinking. And the character I'm going to introduce you to now is Cinderella, of the fairy tale type. And yes, guys, I know you're all like, Cinderella, why do I need to think about her? In this story, you are also, well, you're a Cinderfella in this one instead of being a Cinderella, or whatever version of labels you want to put in yourself. You're Cinder people. But let's talk about her for a second. Okay, so when we arrive at the beginning of the Cinderella story, Cinderella's situation is not awesome. She has an irrational boss and uncooperative customers. And her job, if you think about it, is she is the COO of the Tremaine household, which is what the family name is. And shockingly, I do want to point out that she is really good at getting shit done. But she's also more than that. She's really good at leading through influence. I want to point out that Cinderella had all sorts of critters and people around her who were doing work for her for free, except for little Gus Gus the mouse, who did work for cheese. But then I would also say she was really resourceful with everything that she had to work with. So was able to keep that house spotlessly clean, keep food on the table, keep everybody dressed with practically no money because they had lost all of it. 2, she is also able to deal with a demanding and unfocused boss who does not value her. I think this is a really missed opportunity. I talk about the stepmother specifically and say, wow, if the stepmother had been a potentialist and thought about the future her and the future team, my guess is she would have looked at her daughters and Cinderella and said, okay, I'm going to be real here for just a second. I have some like A- players in my own kids, but I've got an A+ player in Cinderella. And if I double down and invest in Cinderella, then maybe all boats will rise here. And I need to actually get out of my own ego here for a second and not worry about my people and actually look at the larger family. But we all know that that didn't quite happen because, you know, the stepmother had a bit of a scarcity problem. Let's talk about the stepsisters a second. Cinderella was really good with dealing with difficult customers, really good. Do you see what I did there in just describing, like when I first ask people, what is Cinderella known for? Most people say she's kind of a sad and pathetic character who was basically rescued by a prince. I've now just described somebody who, if I gave you headcount, would you hire her? Probably, because she actually sounds pretty awesome. And that's just half of the stuff that I talk about where Cinderella is pretty interesting, because nobody in that scenario recognized her potential. And I just painted a new picture for you. Now, here's the other thing you should know is while I call myself a potentialist, I also call myself the fairy godmother, because you are all my Cinderellas and or Cinderfellas or Cinder whatevers, Cinder thems. I'll come up with a word. You are all Cinderella in this story, because if you're talking about ambition, that's actually what the fairy godmother did for Cinderella. So when fairy godmother and Cinderella met, the fairy godmother did not say, by the way, if you learn how to talk to your boss a little better, maybe she would be a little less crazy. And if you learned how to talk to your customers in the language that they want, maybe they wouldn't be quite so irrational. She didn't do any of that stuff. She did not say, Cinderella, you need to change who you are and why you are uniquely awesome. She just said, gotcha. You want to go to a ball and dance, maybe with a prince, that would be a bonus. We can make that happen. First of all, if you show up in this sad little outfit and tatty, like no fly ride, they are not even going to let you on the property, let alone let you get all the way to the ballroom floor. This comes back to, why do they need you? In her ambition, she needed to go to the ball so she could go dance. And on the need, she needed all of the decision makers along the way to the ballroom floor to actually say, yes, actually, you do belong here. We're not going to turn you back at the gate. So when you think about the whole, I need to put a pretty dress on and I need the coach and all of that, it's actually to get past a bunch of decision makers, because we do make judgment pieces. So then let's move on to need. Like, why do they need you? Well, the prince needed a dance partner, and he needed to be able to see her. Well, so you sit here and say the fairy godmother basically said, I'm going to judge you so that people can say yes to the future you. But here's the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make you feel so fantastic that when you reach the top of the stairs, you make the grand entrance so you can be seen by the prince. There was none of this sneaking in the side door, yay, I made it in the room, actually action happening. So the whole fairy godmother judge was really critically important, because it helped others choose her and built her confidence. And then last but not least, I think the other thing on the how do you make it easy to say yes, I want to talk about the glass slipper. It was not an accident. If you think about it in the story, when the clock hit 12, absolutely everything magicked away with the exception of the shoe. And I think this was all the fairy godmother's doing, because the shoe had 3 jobs. One, when the person making a decision in the room that Cinderella was not in went back into the ballroom, aka the prince, and he had other people he could choose from, he had a reminder about why Cinderella was uniquely awesome. 2, when the prince got up the next morning and went to dad and said, oh, I think I found the one. This is the equivalent of Jeremy going to the board and saying, we are going to take this strategic vision. He was able to show them as well as tell them why Cinderella was uniquely awesome. And basically was the whole trying on the shoe thing is how he found her at the end of the day. She made it really easy for them to say yes to the future Cinderella. I would argue that the glass slipper is the first example of corporate swag ever created. I'll just put that out there as a thought. Think about that. Are you going to do better? Does your corporate swag do 3 jobs or 1? Think about that. Okay. So the download I spoke about earlier, all of these questions, as I said, and other ones, there's actually 23 questions that I throw at you, are in that document. If you don't want the download, that's totally fine. We've got other things we're going to want to ask you. So we actually want everybody to click on that. And Kelly, if you haven't already shared that in chat, you could do that again. I add to this, as I was talking with Lori and Jeremy and everybody, and our group interest in the principles and Ray Dalio, I was thinking we had a lot of you look at the Principles U program right before you showed up. And I sit here and I say, gosh, what a lovely idea, because the Principle U, when you look at it, gives you a really good idea of who you are and what you could be ambitious for, so that you can start thinking about the future you and where you want to take that. And I want answers to both sets of questions. I want the Ray Dalio, Adam Grant questions, and I want my questions answered, because I think that's when you really get to start taking agency of your future. Okay, I have done a lot of talking, and I've talked about Star Trek and Cinderella, which I don't think any of you have probably been in a meeting where you've had both characters show up. I hope not. You know, trying to make it a little bit different. So I want to be real and show you what it looks like in real life, and show you the little bit of the magic of the potential of some fairy godmother come to life. So I am looking for another volunteer, and I'm not going to give any guidance on this, to do a little experiment with me. Who is game? Oh, I see Chelsea's hand go right up. Anybody else? Kelly, did we have anybody in chat?
Nobody in chat except for Chelsea.
Okay, well, Chelsea, you get to be the one. Well, your hand went up first, so we're going to do you. Okay, Chelsea.
Okay, great.
How do I want to start? Okay. So just a quick check-in, only because I think this is important. Where is your head now that you have heard some of this about this future you thinking? What are you curious about? What has resonated with you, other than I saw you nodding at the Cinderella story?
I mean, I guess just the whole concept of focusing on like you, the future you, instead of present you, and kind of, you know, I think the biggest thing that resonated with me that you said all night was about every decision happens in a room you're not in. That was kind of just one of those moments where I was like, wow, okay, that's really impactful.
It's like, oh, well, I hear that people make some really great decisions about you all the time, but just out of curiosity, if I was to go out and ask, I'm going to put you on the spot, people, what you are known for, what would be your answer today?
I'm going to not say getting shit done.
Well, here's my question. Would you have said that before you saw the presentation?
Potentially.
Yeah. So what now do you think? How would you, like, if I was to say, let's actually take this up a level. So Chelsea, by the way, while I've done a little bit of stalking about all of you, and I know that Chelsea is your CFO. I don't really, like, we've not met before. Today was the first time. I don't know anything about you. If I was to ask you, other than I know that you are the CFO at Created, if I was to ask you, what do you do? How do you answer the question today?
I manage our finance team and ensure that we are fully compliant and on time with all of our public reporting and governance concerns.
Okay, kind of a big job, slightly important. I'm just going to say that out loud. Okay, what do you want people? So let's back up to the questions. What are you ambitious for? What do you want to teach people about the future you?
Teach people about the future me. I'm very ambitious to kind of grow and scale things within Created. You know, take all of these seeds of ideas that we've had over the years and grow them into like institutional level programs that we all live by.
Okay.
Both within the financial team and governance and just overall. You know, I've worked in most of the departments throughout the company. And so just watching that growth and being able to be part of it is probably the thing I'm most passionate about here.
Okay, awesome. Why are you really, I need you to brag for just a second. Why are you really good at growing and scaling things? What is it that you see that other people don't see? What's kind of your method?
I think a lot of it is about the frame of reference, right? So like I see not only each individual department and what they're doing here, but the bigger picture of what Created is and how each individual aspect and each individual person touches everything else in the company. And that kind of ripple effect and how they all interact and what that means, you know, one manager needs to do differently because it impacts these other 5 managers.
Is it fair to say that you almost see the entire ecosystem in 3D in your head, which means you're able to identify kind of acceleration points?
I like to think so. Possibly not as clearly as Jeremy, but.
Okay, so you just said somebody's better at it than you. What do you think you bring uniquely to the table with this interesting way of thinking? Like, how are you different from Jeremy?
I think I have the more like rigid institutional regulatory approach to it from Jeremy, and it's a good like check and balance for each of us, right? Like he sees that whole ecosystem and everything that could possibly be, and I see the hard limits, and between the two of us, we find the gray area between them and how we can grow outside of that gray area as best as possible.
Okay, so first of all, because this is now your shoe, maybe, I was drawing this as you were talking. And here's the thing, visual elements are 6,000 times easier to remember than a bunch of words on a page. And so I sit here and I say, if, let's say, pretend for a second, Chelsea, you are hiring somebody new to your team and you want to explain to them who you are and your high level, like how you think, just drawing a Venn diagram and putting a 3-circle Venn diagram. And I put frame of reference, interaction, and hard limits in there tells a story about who you are and how you think in a really simple way. I just kind of throw this out by a show of hands, like how many of you, just based on the questions I was asking Chelsea, learned something about her that you didn't know? Yeah, so we had, well, most of the room, right? This is why these questions, I think, are so critically important, because now you've learned something about Chelsea that you didn't know. My guess is that you've got really big ambitions, among other things. Now they know how to engage you beyond just being the CFO. We've just taught this entire room about the future you, and now that you've got a not very pretty graphic, you can do that at speed, because at the end of the day, you could say, like, so the next time somebody asks you what you do, or you're introducing somebody to you could say something to the effect of, well, technically, I am the CFO at Created, but I look at the entire ecosystem of the organization and see it in 3 dimensions, because what I'm looking for are acceleration points so that we can grow and scale. And that frame of reference could be people, could be systems, could be processes. And it's understanding how to untangle and rebuild those interactions while playing against both our big ambitions and the hard limits of what it is we need to do, that I really bring to the table at Created. And I look to do that in any way, shape, and form that I can. How does that feel about talking about the future you and this combination of what you do and who you could be?
Feels like a much better answer to that question than I've ever had before. So.
Well, the good news is we recorded this session, so you're going to get a copy of that. But I want to unpack what I did with it. But like, how many of you are like, holy cow, that was like, I want an answer for that. I want an answer for me like that. Because this is what we're talking about. Like, if you start to teach people about the future you, the opportunities start to open up for everybody. And you really start to do, and if you do that consistently over time, again, I'll use Elon and Ruth Bader Ginsburg as examples, it makes it significantly easier to choose the future you.
We do Blake, please do Blake. Let's do Blake, let's do Blake.
Oh my God.
Only if Blake wants to. Can we hold him until the end and see if we've got time so that if people need to go places?
Screw everybody. Let's do Blake. Go ahead, do Blake.
Joanna, he put his hand up.
Oh, he
Yeah.
did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
Well,
He
let's
did
do
put
it.
his hand up.
Let's do a quick one. So Blake, where are you on the screen? Wave at me so I can,
There he is.
hang on a sec. I still
Wave
don't.
again,
Blake,
Blake.
Wave again. Stand
Oh,
up.
there you are, Blake. Okay, you're gonna have to
Stand- there
roll
he
it,
is.
like, come to me.
Come forward to the camera.
Come to me. Come to me. Come to me. Come to me. I'm gonna be able to see you. All right, Blake. I really don't know anything. So explain me what you do, just in normal, boring terms that I can understand.
I help Robbie achieve his goals and make his job easier.
Like, well, what is that? Like, are you? I don't know who Ravi is and what he does, which is terrible, but that's the deal. Like, what? Let's just pretend I'm going to do this in a different setting. Let's pretend we are at a networking event, like we're actually out in public and all of this, and somebody goes to you, "Hey, Blake, what do you do?" What's your answer today?
I solve problems for people.
You really say that? How do people respond to that? Okay. So are you?
Type of?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they generally ask what type of problems.
And what is the answer to that? Big ones?
Problems other people can't or won't solve.
Okay. Okay. Here's my, so you put your hand up. Why did you put your hand up? Why do you want to have a different way of talking about the future you?
I don't necessarily, but I'm open to hearing it.
Okay. Well, so I come back to, like, I can do the transformation piece, but without actually understanding what your goal is and what you're ambitious for, I can't actually help you. Because if Cinderella had come up and said, I want to go to a basketball game, she would have gotten a different outfit, right? So when you're thinking about teaching people about you and what you do, and I hear the, I'm not a braggadocious asshole tone in your, like, you're like, I don't go there and I don't play there, which is fine. You don't have to. But when you think about what are you ambitious for, either selfishly or generously, it doesn't matter. Like, what is it you want people to learn about you so that they can choose you?
That I'll do anything and go to any length to solve any problem that they have.
Okay. So I'm going to push back a tiny bit, because those, while they are probably very accurate answers, are answers that almost everybody would answer. They are recognizable, sure, but unique, not so much. So why is it you are particularly, like, you'll go to any length, but why are you better at solving problems than other people? I need you to brag for just a second. And I know it doesn't seem to be your normal operating procedure.
Why am I better at solving problems?
Talk to me about how you think and why that helps you solve problems better, rather than the fact that you solve problems, which is what you do.
I guess because I view it in those terms. When people are handed tasks, they're not handed, like, they view tasks like too myopically. So always viewing it as like, what problem are you solving keeps you within a defined framework and timeline and process of how to actually achieve that goal.
Talk to me more about, so there's a framework of, say that again, timeline?
And I guess steps of logic that you should follow to understand of how you should achieve that goal or solve that problem.
I'm going to push still. I feel like I'm still getting buzzword bingo here, as opposed to really getting an understanding of how you think, rather than, I feel like you're telling me what you think I need to hear because there's a bunch of people watching. And I know I'm putting you on the spot and still keep giving you the thing, but I sit here. So Why is it you see the answers faster than other people? Or do you?
Because I look at how people smarter than me have solved the problem and
Okay, so
try
you
to understand where
Okay.
they fell short, and then how can I solve the problem better than someone solved it, and someone smarter than me solved it.
So you have a methodology that looks to pattern recognition first, then a desire to improve second. Is there a third leg to the stool that you're always like, look, we can do, or is the leg to the stool that you really actually prefer not the easy problems, but the really gnarly, hard problems that are multidimensional and take patience?
The third leg to that stool would be, there's no problem, that we shouldn't be solving this. And like the kind of the counter argument.
So it's
like,
attitudinal. Do you think,
I love
as an example, that some people just kind of give up because they don't believe that last statement?
Correct, or they believe that there's a problem without really taking the counter and wondering, like, is this a problem not worth solving? Because it's a high effort, low reward scenario.
Okay. Now I am getting to understand this more. Okay, there's a bunch of different paths you could go down with this. Because now I think I understand what you've been trying to say, because what I'm hearing, and FYI, for those of you, if you want to go out and practice this with people around teaching them who you are, the first question I always have people ask after you've done this is not, what do you think? But actually ask the question, what did you hear? When you ask somebody, what did you hear? You actually find out whether they've understood you, which is really the critical piece. And if they're a fan of you, you just gave them a practice session about how to talk about you in a room that you are not in. So the result of your work is that you solve problems. You can say, well, so somebody says, what do you do? You can say, like, the result of the work I do is that I solve really big problems for people. But I am a student of the world of problem solving, in that there can be patterns and processes that you can create to solve problems. But more importantly, the first question you should ask is this a problem worth solving at all? And so I look at the entire ecosystem of problems, question them, and ultimately help prioritize so we can figure out how to solve the problems that need solving. I said problems a lot, but it could be said similar to that. So that starts to teach how you are more than just a problem solver. You are more than just a tool. It starts to talk a little bit more about your thinking style. Just out of curiosity for the room, did the second description, well, now I'm going to put myself on the spot. Did the second description describe how Blake thinks based on your interactions with him? Yes, no? Chelsea says yes. I see a nod there. I see some nods around the room. And was it easier to understand and more importantly, to, in essence, explain to other people with that framework than the Blake solves big problems? I hope so.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's, and this is why I come back to the whole conversation around this experience and talking about the future you and figuring out is unique to every single individual and how they want to be in the world. Because, I show up in sequins and talk about Star Trek and Cinderella. And Blake, I can hear the humility and how you approach things and, in essence, how you teach people. And I'm not saying you need to lose any of that, but I am saying that when you are clear about how you think versus what you do, then people can understand how to choose you. And Kelly, I'm not going to ask you to pull this out of the artifact tool, but what I will send to the team after this is Reid Hoffman wrote an article a while back that really does this, I think, beautifully well as an executive, which Blake, I think might resonate with you, as he doesn't, although he certainly talks quite a bit on his podcast, He's a big thinker, problem solver too. And so I'll share that as an example of how you can do that in a different format other than just talking. Okay. So, and I know we've run over a little tiny bit here, but that was a really fascinating experience. Thank you, Blake, for doing that. Did you find that useful? Did it help you think differently about the future you? Maybe.
Yeah, it was helpful.
Maybe. I'm not sure I've got you completely bought it, which is what I'm going to throw back out to you. So that link we keep sharing with you guys about the joannabloor.com/created link. Yes, you can download the workbook. There are actually other questions on there that I would like to know the answer to. So you can go on there and go, no, thank you, I don't want the workbook. If you do not want it, it is an option. But there are 2 experiences that we work with teams to do after this. And as I said to Jeremy and Lori, forcing people into personal development work is, I don't think, a very good idea, because if you don't want to do it, if you're not bought into it, then you don't want to do it. And so one of the experiences is we actually do some market research about you and help you figure out, well, okay, what am I ambitious for? What is being said about me in rooms that I'm not in? And how do I actually start to figure out what I'm known for? And then, of course, I do some programming where there's some one-on-one work. And so if you're either curious on doing either of those yourselves, just fill in the form. You can sit here and go, yes, I'm interested. No, I'm not, whatever. We are genuinely curious to find out so that we can have a thought about whether we want to do more of this kind of work with you. Last thing before I let you go. I want to go back from being all selfish for a second and ask you to be generous, especially for those, well, and now it's not going to share it. For those of you that picked people who you actually know, I think Armand, well, you might know some of the people you picked. The most powerful thing you can do for another individual is help them see their own potential and why you are choosing them. And so if anybody on your list of people, your people that you wrote down, were on your list that you know personally, in the next 48 hours, go share this exercise with them and tell them that you picked them. Because when you are seen, it helps with confidence. When you are seen and somebody helps with understand your potential, it actually helps them manifest their own ambitions. And that, in my book, is the most generous thing that you can do. So that was the entire presentation. I'm keeping you, well, I may or may not be keeping you from cocktails. I was going to just open this up. I can stay on for a little bit longer if you guys are interested and just do open Q&A for anybody who is interested. Or
yeah, we'll do open Q&A and I'll start. So yeah. I think for all of you, one of the reasons you should all wonder, why is Jeremy having Joanna here tonight? Do any of you who know me long know that I never do anything that isn't calculated, prepared, and thought through? Robbie, do you know me not to be that way or to be that way?
I think that you've been consistent for the 6 years we've worked together.
Correct. COVID has infected our culture. Joanna's here to help you. It's no different than when my world was rocked, as many of you know, and I wound up in rehab in 2010 and then rebuilt my life. And the thing I liked about Joanna was that we were aligned, and Blake, was fine. It reminds me of all of you, especially those of you who are new and never even spent too much time in the office during this period. Don't confuse ego and the desire to understand yourself and be the best version of yourself. That's not egotistical. Doesn't matter, Blake, if you think it's humble. It doesn't matter, Sarah, if you wouldn't want to show off about a skill set, or Max, you wouldn't want to recognize both your strengths and weaknesses. Understanding your strengths and weaknesses is the greatest strength. And to understand your strengths and weaknesses is not ego, that's humility. And so To be tested mentally, to define yourself is the goal. It's people who don't do that and then act as if they did. Those are the people with egos. Understanding yourself is not an ego thing. And that was why I aligned with Joanna, because it took me 20 years, as many of you know, in a world where all it was ego. 100% ego all day long. So much so that it almost destroyed me as an individual. And then I met Justin and many of you on this call, eventually even Lori and others. And every day I spend, Blake, trying to answer the questions that Joanna asked. Every day, Max, I study my strengths and my weaknesses. And every day, Sarah, I have success and mistakes. And I don't hide from them. And I hope that all of you would want at some level or another, which I am happy to financially absorb, to do what I do, which is utilize someone like Joanna and her team to make yourself the best version of what you can be. That's what she's articulating. That's what I took away from it, Joanna. With that said, I would love to hear any questions that any of you have about the psychology around these concepts that Joanna discussed. Robbie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Joanna, are there daily routines that we should be doing in the morning to help us sort of get our day in a better place than it currently is?
Good question. Exercises.
Yes. Do I have a daily? Well, there's a couple of things that I always think about on a daily basis. Do I have a pat answer to that? So one, I actually, when I think about this concept of future you, and not just on the who am I, how do I answer all of those questions, but am I investing in the future you? And I look at my job any day of the week and I say, okay, how much of my time should I be spending on kind of today me, like now me, versus near me, which is who I want to be, 6 to 12 months from now. And then who is future me, the one that is 1 to 2 years out. And let's say, as an example, you say your numbers are, I'm just going to make stuff up here, like 70, 20, 10. I then sit here and say, okay, am I being intentional about the 10% of my time that I'm working that's thinking about not only future me for myself, but I'd also argue future me for in the work. It's how you do long-term planning, but am I actually putting that investment? Because it's really easy to get stuck in the day-to-day of, am I checking all of this stuff off the list? And so in that, when I think about the who is the future me and the value of all of you is how you think, then am I a constant student? And so I spend, as an example, an hour or so out on the trails behind my house, and I listen to A16Z podcast because I want to learn about the newest technologies. Although I'm not technically in the technical world anymore, I'm still curious. I listen to a lot of podcasts and listen to a lot of books. And so am I being intentful about my investment of my time into who it is I want to be as you move forward? That, and I try to ask the question, what did you hear? Which is a difficult question to ask often if you have not been doing it for a long time. I try to ask it at least once a day. They always get surprising answers.
Dee, thoughts?
Sure. Well, my thought goes to how do these principles relate to somebody new in their field or in their position versus somebody who's been there for 10 years versus somebody who's been there, for 20 years? Are there different principles related to each stage, or does it just how do you differentiate there?
It's It depends how consistent you've been in the past, right? And what your ambitions are and what you're trying to do in the future. Because up until, well, because if you think about it, that just because you have been in an industry and have expertise for a certain amount of years doesn't necessarily mean that what you are known for today and what you want to be known for are aligned, and what people know you for are aligned. And so I don't actually think tenure has anything to do with it. And, you know, I'll use an example. I was speaking to a high school student actually the other day, and she looked at me and was like, how do I even think, like, I have no experience. I have nothing to talk about. And I was like, well, talk to me about who you were when you were 8. I said, talk to me about like what kind of person you were. How did your, like, what were you known for amongst your friend group? And does that person still manifest today? I think for most of us, certainly for me, my 8-year-old self is constantly raging inside me. So I don't think they change at all. And so I sit here and I go, when you think about your ambitions, how was what you were good at when you were 8 years old manifest into who you are today? And it's not just looking at, I have to be perfect at this one box of things. It's actually looking at the holistic person and who you are creatively, who you are thoughtfully, like what skills do you have in your toolkit, and who is it you want to be, which is really the bigger question. And, you know, I use myself, well, Jeremy and I think this is probably where Jeremy and I were both like, oh, I recognize you. You know, I was in high-end fashion retail for very much part of my early career. And then because somebody said, oh, hang on a second, you know how to sell swimwear? You can sell internet websites back in the 90s. I got to break into the whole .com startup world. And I was in media and ad technology for 25 years, which is a little horrifying to say out loud. Like, and I'm super sorry, guys. I actually helped write the industry standard terms and conditions for online advertising, the first version back in like 2001. Not my favorite project, but very interesting. And 5 years ago, I walked away from it all. 5 years ago, I didn't even know what I was going to do, let alone had any expertise in what I did. And I've completely created a whole new person over the last 5 years, but a whole new person that is still the same person I was when I was 8. I just know more stuff. And so I look at experiences saying, like, how much stuff do you know? Who do you want to be, and how can you leverage that for your future? And the volume of stuff doesn't actually matter, because it's not about you at all. It's actually about what other people want from you that matters. It's kind of a roundy question. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, and I'll send this as well. There was a TikTok I saw today of this young woman who wanted to learn how to make ads and started making ads with mundane things like forks and potatoes and dumb stuff, and just putting them up as TikToks just for fun. And I think she looks about maybe 23, 24, and now just got a big giant job directing commercials for a big agency because they saw her TikToks and were like, we want this kind of thinking. That said, when you have a CFO, you want somebody who understands those, you know, what Chelsea needs to be good at doing. I think that gray area of where are the limits and where aren't is a different need when you are looking at a different role. Depends on what you are trying. Yeah, depends on what like what problem you're trying to solve. Awesome. Well, guys, I unfortunately do have a hard stop at the top of the hour, and I think I might freak them out if I show up in sequence a tiny bit. So I need to roll. But please feel free to reach out if you have any questions in the future. You can find me. I'm on Twitter a lot, and also on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out and connect and ask questions. I also, by the way, host a show that's free every Friday at noon Pacific. You can find that on joannabloor.com. I think this week we are talking about how to explain your brilliant brain with a graphic. In 2 weeks, we are talking about confidence. it is open for anybody who is interested. So if you're like, I'm not doing this in front of all of my coworkers, it's a really great place to go as well. But we are always out there sharing about really how to navigate this new area of future work. And I look forward to finding out what people are curious to do in the future. Or if you have any other questions, obviously Gina and Terrell have been along on this journey with me. And so feel free to reach out to them. They know where to find me too.
Joanna, thank you so much for being part of our happy hour Cinco de Mayo. Kelly, thank you for supporting and being there and putting stuff in the chat. We recorded this, so we'll Gina will have it for forever. So you want to go back and look at it? That's great. Thank you, Gina and Terrell, for helping organize and put this together. Seriously, we'll follow up with you all individually to see what you want to do as a follow-up again, whether it's as a group session or as individuals. There's more to come.
Awesome.
So thank you again. Muchas gracias.
Yes.
Thank you.